Hi, everybody. Welcome to our session 2 of Identifying the Elephant in the Room series, addressing sexism and in the natural products industry specifically. I am Amy Summers, and I am founder and president of INICIVOX and Pitch Publicity. And my co-host today with me is Gabriel Paulino. Gabriel, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabriel Paulino. I'm the co-founder and chief product officer of renegade.bio, as well as a board member and co-founder of the Naturally Proud Network, which is a LGBTQIA+ professional network in the natural product industry. That mission is to bound people from the LGBT community through networking event at the major events of our natural product industry, such as Expo West and Supply Side West.
And we're so honored to have Naturally Proud Network as a partner of our series. And thank you for being so supportive of that. You guys had a great event at Expo West.
It was, wasn't it? I couldn't believe the energy that was in the room. It was just, yeah, incredible. After, we've been up and running for 4 years. However, the last 3 years has been kind of chaotic for everyone. So we were just really happy to be all back together in the same room and being able to just do what we love to do, which is network without, any fear or anything of just wanting to enjoy our time with others.
Yeah, there was so much energy at your event. You must have been so proud, not to be cliche, but you must have been so proud about that. I mean, I appreciated the platform to share with your members about the Elephant in the Room project, and there was just so much great energy there. Now I know that you're a co-founder of Naturally Proud Network, right?
That's right. Yes.
So tell me a little bit about whose idea was it? How did the idea come up, and how did you put it all together? Because I can't believe this is our only LGBTQ+ organization in the industry, and it's
I was surprised
2023.
When I joined the industry, I was like, I consider myself kind of like a young one in the industry. I've only been in the industry for 15 years. And it was surprising to me coming, from academia and joining the natural product industry, an industry that is focused on health and wellness. I was really expecting to find other LGBT professionals around. And I was surprised that actually there was not that many. And one day I remember having a meeting with Ken Seguin, who unfortunately is retired now. But after that lunch meeting we had together in Long Beach, he reached out to me and started to question and wonder. It's like, hey, we've been talking with Randy, who's another one of our co-founders, and we just realized that we feel kind of like alone. And Randy and Ken had actually met at the Nutrition Business Journal and a summit that happened in summer, and they realized that why is there not more LGBT professional in that industry? So after Ken reached out to me and then introduced me to Randy, who I met also in Long Beach, to start discussing. It's like, what can we do? Well, first was like, well, who do we know that we want to join this circle? So I knew Frank from Nexira, Frank Gillette, who was now our president of Natural Pride Network, and I reached out to him right away because he's French, I'm French. We got this relationship.
The French connection. That's how it
French
started.
Connection.
Naturally Proud Network. I did not know this part of the story. The French connection. Does Crystal know about this? She does now.
She definitely does now.
She's listening. She's in the chat. I see her.
Oh, she is. Hi, Crystal. Definitely. I mean, Crystal joined right after, because I believe Crystal knew Frank. So, and little by little, we started to connect all the people that we knew. And we're like, you know what? Let's do something. So
Okay.
We just gathered and said, well, let's start simple. Let's just have a happy hour.
That's a
So
great
that
way to
was-
start any group with
Right?
a happy hour, right?
It's like low hanging fruit. It's like, let's
Right.
come together at Supply Side West. So that was Supply Side West 2018, I believe. And at the time I was at Bulletproof, and I had great colleagues that say, hey, we're trying to do this. Why don't you join? And I believe we were not more than like 10 people in that bar at the when you exit Supply Side West. And that's it. That was the beginning. 10 people, and not only LGBT, but also allies, which was great to see that from the beginning. It was just not this kind of cultish, we like just want to be like within LGBT people. No, it's an event that is welcome to everyone, including cis straight male.
Yes, I loved your event.
Thank you. No, I have to say, it's like I've gone to many networking events, and it just has a different energy, flavor. Like it just feels easier to connect with others. I've always had kind of like that trouble in networking event that I never felt like I always felt like out of place. So we created a space where we wouldn't feel out of place. And 4 years later, like you've seen the results, and it's absolutely incredible.
4 years and a pandemic later, and you guys have done a good job. Yes. I mean, that kind of got in the way of the network.
That really got in the way, and that we were scared, of course. We're like, okay, we're just having this this momentum right before the pandemic, and then boom, pandemic happened. But you know what? Pandemic is in the past, and now we are. And the Expo West was a wonderful event, and I can tell moving forward, it will be one of the major networking events, whether it is at Expo West or at Supply Side West. We're actually going international for the first time this year. We're gonna have Steve, one of our members, represent Naturally Proud Network at Vita Foods in Switzerland.
Oh, great!
Also,
fantastic.
So first time going international after 4 years, so that's great.
Well, let me know when the event is in France. For the French connection part, we need to schedule something there. I'll go to that one.
I believe that, don't they have food ingredients? Yeah, that would be a great
I mean, they definitely have food in France, that I know.
That's for sure. That missed it right away.
Gabriel, I really like that you told us the backstory on Natural Proud Network and how you got it started. And I love that story because it's so much of, I think, what we're trying to accomplish with this series as well, or one of the reasons why I wanted to do this. It was not set up, as a venting session for women. I didn't want it to be like that. I didn't want men to feel like they couldn't come and talk to us. I wanted to create an environment that was welcoming to all people, so we could have these discussions. And your story about Naturally Proud Network is such a great example of how people within our natural products community saw a problem and they put something together. They developed an organization. It didn't exist. You didn't sit back and wait for New Hope to do it or some other group to do it. And you put it together. And so I'm really hoping that people that are coming to our Elephant in the Room series, that you get inspired. If you're here in the room right now, you're a leader. You're a leader because you're interested in this topic, first of all, and you want to do something about it. And I want to let everyone know that you may be wondering what's happening on session 6, because I don't have any guest right now for session 6. But session 6 could be you out there. So I want you to continue on this journey with us, this kind of 6-week crash session that's a little bit in your face about sexism. And I want you to be inspired. I want you to be empowered. I want you to come up with ideas, just like Gabriel and some of his board members at Naturally Proud Network came up with some ideas. Come up with some ideas on how we can make our community better. You have a good idea. I want you to message me on LinkedIn, email me, tell me what your idea is. And you could be our panelist for session 6. I want to be able to give you that platform to talk about your idea. And it could be a company level idea. It could be a community level idea. But I think that each of us have a personal responsibility on this subject matter. It's not something that we should expect conference organizers to take care of for us, or the government, or right, Gabrielle? Like, we need to take a personal responsibility.
Absolutely. And by the way, I wanted to mention that, it did start as a 10 people small happy hour, but very quickly the industry has been very supportive. I really want to mention the support of Informa for all the events we've organized. They've always been there to support us. And also I want to mention that, in our part of our members, we do have allies too. Thinking of Kurt, part of the ingredient, straight, smell, white guy, and he's there with us. He's helping us. He'll be representing Naturally Proud Network at IFT this year in Chicago, organizing an event at the LGBT Center. So yeah, it's definitely not only about the L, the G, or the B, or the T. It's all about us. We all have the power to make a change, and we welcome everybody at the table, at our group, at our happy hour. And that's how we want to create those connections and those conversations, and create the space where everybody can be who they are.
Yeah, I think it's great. And maybe Kennedy, you could drop the Naturally Proud Network website in the chat in case anyone is interested in learning how to get involved. Again, they're one of our partners. And we're so happy to have them as part of our series. And Gabriel is co-hosting with me right now, but after this panel, you're going to be on After the Elephant, and I'm really excited about that too.
I am
looking
too.
forward to the After the Elephant session?
Absolutely. I'm actually very happy to be on the panel with Ilan. I love Ilan. Ilan, since I met him back when I was at Bulletproof visiting Alchemist Labs, which is an absolutely fabulous lab. I've always loved.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
and I do remember actually at the Nutrition Business Journal Summit about 3 years ago, right before the pandemic, which was the first time I went to this event. And Ilan was very welcome. I remember I was by myself looking for a table to have lunch, and again I felt very out of place. It's like, okay, well, seems like everybody know each other here, so where do I sit? And Ilan welcomed me to his table, and it was great. It was great to have someone.
It's funny, when I invited Ilan, he asked me, well, who else is going to be on After the Elephant? And I mentioned your name. He goes, oh, Gabriel. Yes, he inspected my lab, but we passed, so that's good.
It's beautiful lab. I love lab. I'm a geek, so it's like show me HPLC, and I'll be happy.
So we will. The After the Elephant airs live on social media. We're going to drop those links in the chat towards the end. We don't want you to leave us now, because we're going to get ready right now to introduce our panel coming up in just about 1 minute. So I just want to take a second and again, thank everybody who is coming in the room. And I'm a very action-oriented person. Gabriel is, because he's helped start Naturally Proud Network. And so we want you to be action-oriented today. We had a really good session. If you missed it, I'm so sorry. You can go back and watch the replay. You should. Hank Schultz was actually on our After the Elephant last year, and he wrote a really good article that he published yesterday. I just put in the chat for everyone if you want to check it out, about what happened in the session last week. This session, Gabriel and I were in the rehearsal, and it's going to be hot. It's going to be a good one. But we want you to be thinking about what are some key takeaways, what are some action items that we can get out of this. We had some really good ones from last week that I'm going to just throw in the chat. Just some of these things are really simple on how to support women and how to support other people in the industry that maybe don't get a platform. So take a look at that. And as you do, we're going to get ready and introduce our panelists for session 2. Welcome, everybody. This is Identifying the Elephant in the Room, Critical Communication Strategies in the Face of Sexism. And in this session 2 panel, we are taking a closer look at the healthcare, nutrition, and science side of the industry. So all of our panelists have some sort of background in that. And I forgot to do the math. Again, I'm in PR, so I really am not good at math. I'm sure, Gabrielle, you're so much better than I am, but we have more than 100 years of experience that are about to like load into our panel here. So I think you're going to get a lot of knowledge dropped on you today. Our first panelist I would like to introduce is Dr. Kantha Shelke. She is a certified food scientist and IFT fellow. She teaches at Johns Hopkins University. Her firm, Corvus Blue, LLC, helps develop and commercialize new products and technologies. Kantha serves on the Faculty Advisory Board for Food and Agriculture at McGill University in Montreal, and on the Board of Trustees of the Sonoran University of Health Sciences in Tempe, Arizona. Welcome, Kantha.
Thank you, Amy.
Next, I would like to introduce a longtime client of mine. I've known James for 18 years now, James B. LaValle. He is a clinical pharmacist, author, board certified clinical nutritionist, and CEO of Metabolic Code Enterprises with 40 years of clinical experience in metabolic and integrative medicine. He serves as the academic co-chair for the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine and is an appointed faculty member and course educator for the Integrative Medicine Postgraduate Program at George Washington University School of Health Sciences. Jim has authored more than 20 books, including Cracking the Metabolic Code. And going to go off script a little bit here, Jim, just to add in my 2 cents. Jim was one of my first clients early on in my career. And I will say this about Jim, I really respect you. You have also been a very good mentor to me and put me in the right rooms and introduced me to right people to help me make my business very successful. And Jim's given me a lot of advice along the way that has been very helpful to me. So you are a testimony to my success as well. So thank you.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Nice. Thank you, Amy. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Keri Marshall. Dr. Keri Marshall is an epidemiologist and naturopathic doctor with more than 2 decades of experience in natural products industry and clinical practice and more than 3 decades experience in health and human research. She received her naturopathic medical degree from the National University of Natural Medicine in Portland, Oregon. Dr. Marshall is the author of User's Guide to Protein and Amino Acids and serves on several advisory and editorial boards for peer-reviewed medical journals and health advocacy groups. Welcome, Keri.
Thanks so much, Gabrielle, and thanks, Amy, for putting this together.
And now I'd like to introduce Sandra Lee. Sandra Lee is the CEO of NJ Labs, a nationally recognized provider and advocate for quality in chemistry and microbiology testing that serves the pharmaceutical, nutraceutical, dietary supplement, cosmetic, and cannabis CBD industries. Sandra holds a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from the University of Michigan. As a scientist and one of the few female CEOs in the analytical testing industry, she has a passion for chemistry and how it influenced multiple aspects of our daily lives. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you, Gabe. Hi, everyone.
And finally, we're going to introduce the moderator, Lisa Davis. She has 2 decades of experience as a health educator and broadcaster and holds a master's degree in public health, known as the creator and host of It's Your Health radio show, and is currently producing and hosting the Health Power and Dog-Eared podcasts. Lisa had me on her Health Power show to talk about elephant in the room. I'm still trying to get her to get my puppy Winnie on the dog-eared one, so we'll have to talk about that one later. Lisa is author of a book called Clean Eating and Dirty Sex. I'm not going to give you the subtitle. You need to go on Amazon to check out what the rest of that book is about, and has a passion for helping people live their healthiest life. And I'm so happy to have Lisa on. She has been someone we work with in media for many, many years and always does excellent radio shows and TV shows and podcasts. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Gabrielle. I'm very excited to be here. We're going to jump right in.
Well, before you do, Gabriel and I are going to jump right out. So we'll wish you a good panel. We'll wish you all a good panel. And I'm really excited to hear what we're going to learn today.
Enjoy, everyone.
Thank you. Keri, I'd love to start with you. Have you ever been fired or quit a job because of sexual harassment issues? And what resources were lacking at your company that could have provided you a pathway to stay and succeed?
Well, I see you're just going to jump right in.
Oh,
Lisa.
I don't mess around.
Why not just jump right into the heart of this? I know we've talked, in the past too, as a group about some of these things. And, the first thing I'm going to say is, yes, I have, for different reasons. We'll just say different folks and different reasons. It's kind of a funny time to be talking about it in light of what's going on politically right now with discussions around our former president and hush money. So, one of the things I can say is in situations like that, typically when there is a situation, I don't think we call it hush money per se, but typically when you do walk away, there's often a non-disclosure that is signed where you really can't talk about the details, which is really the reality of the situation. I think there's generalities that we can talk about it because it's, definitely come in the way of a direct boss, an indirect boss. And it's always a very strange situation for sure, because, I didn't even understand the definition of sexual assault until it really happened. I think just even a takeaway from it, because I've thought a lot about this and since Amy's asked me to do this, is, find your trusted people that you can share your experience with right away. Because I think when situations like that happen, you have a reality check with yourself. Like, did that really just happen? Like, where you question yourself, like, what did I do to make that happen? Anytime there's any kind of sexual assault, whether it's workplace or outside of workplace. And so, it's a very real thing. I've had other colleagues where it's happened to as well. But unfortunately for me, it's happened more than once.
Oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm so glad that you're sharing what happened to you. Does anyone else want to answer this question? Okay, moving on. Speaking of the former president, when interviewed, former President Donald Trump's advice for his own daughter, Ivanka, should she encounter sexual harassment in the workplace, would be to quit and find another career or company to work at. While this advice may not be feasible for all women who don't have the luxury of switching jobs or the guarantee that the next place they go will be immune from sexual harassment issues, what advice would you give your daughter or to any young professional starting out in their career? Kantha?
Not everyone has the option to leave. And even if you left, not everyone has the option to support themselves. So what matters most is how one responds to such a situation, because how we respond can actually change the situation. When we started out today, Amy asked us to think of one word that would sort of encapsulate our spirit and how we tackle this elephant. My word was change. So when I was in high school, I was the only female student because I chose a combination of physics and chemistry and biology. And this is the combination that girls tended to avoid. But it was not the students, it was the teacher who was uncomfortable with me in class. He didn't want me sitting in the front row. He said I would distract the boys. So I had to sit in the last row. I couldn't see very well, but that was okay. But at the end of each class, he would ask me to come up to the board and repeat what was taught. And he would say, if a girl can understand, everybody can. So how do I change this? I had no power. I had to go to school. So I decided I'm changing the equation. I took this opportunity to pay attention, to learn, and I also took this opportunity to become kind of funny. So I would show up at the board, and then I would put some things in there, but I would draw a little bunny ear on the zero. It was a math class. I would do things like that. And the kids would laugh, and the boys started to like me. I would also bring more girls to class and say, today is bring your friends to class day. And that changed the equation. Funny thing, that teacher got 3 daughters, no sons. So many years later, he met me at the marketplace and he apologized profusely, but said he learned from me and not the other way around. So change the equation. Do something without being forceful, but try and change it. It's not always possible, but it's usually possible.
I'm so glad that he apologized. I'm sorry you had to experience that. Sandra, did you want to comment on this as well?
So this is a very personal question for me because my daughter is about to turn 16 next month. And she said to me lately, Mom, I need money. Like, how can I get money? I was like, well, you have to work. And she was, all right, when can I start working? I was like, oh, well, step back a little bit. And this is the advice I had given to her. I work in a lab where there's different types of work ethics and work cultures, different ethnicities. So coming together, I believe that had been a source of sexism is not understanding different cultures, or if it's very prominent in that culture, it shows up at work. It shows up at home and it shows up at work. So one of the things I told my daughter was, you need to show up for work. It's not a handout. Just because people are talking about it right now doesn't mean that it's not going to take work. It will take work to be consistent and authentic. And if you show up at work and you show that you're a good employee, people tend to listen a little bit more. So when people start to trust you because you have expressed that you are upholding your side, your responsibilities, and there's accountability on your side, they begin to listen to you a little bit more. So one of the things I had told her was, you can't just show up and expect it to be handed to you. You have to work for it. And if you work for it, you can show it by authenticity, consistency, and really proving your worth.
Well, thank you so much. I'd like to go to Jim. What types of uncomfortable situations do men find themselves in when it comes to interacting with women in business settings, and how can men manage this professionally?
Yeah. Real quick comment on the previous question is,
Sure.
we have to teach our young boys how to respect women as well. And so I know for myself, having a blended family of 2 teenage girls and a newborn son, there was a really interesting chemistry that we developed to show that respect early on, and it's paid off. As a 23-year-old, he's, fantastic and understands the value of we're equal and different, and how are we thinking, right? So I think it's important that we, remember that men need re-educated too from the beginning. So sorry, I wanted to add that in. Now I can, answer your question. I think it's interesting. I mean, I lecture a lot. I'm, on stage a bunch. I've written a lot of books. And so you get kind of that little bit of quasi-celebrity status, even from the standpoint of, I lecture a lot of professional audiences. So a lot of docs, a lot of healthcare providers. And then all of a sudden they're linking up to you on social media. And I'm not a big social media guy. And my wife actually manages my social media. And so, I regularly will get someone reach out. I just had this happen last week, like, oh, I'd really like to learn under you. And the way I managed that was, we have education courses. Here is our certificate. And I could tell by the picture that was sent that it was, hey, I'd really like to learn under you. Here's our certification courses. This is where I'm the chair. I'd love for you to come and learn what we have to offer through our coursework. And I think that's really important, that we frame up the way we answer those types of kind of, I would say, social media interactions. And look, I mean, growing up, obviously I would say the old male in the room in my 60s. You learn through this. I mean, growing up, when I grew up, there was that part of kind of sexism that bubbled up through our culture that, I'm not going to sit there and say I didn't participate in that to a certain extent, but really early on learned as a healer and someone that was interested in, medicine, healthcare, and helping, ended up being a lot more women than men, that, how these attitudes and mores had to be changed. And I think for men, they have to start to create a different expectation from the initial that initial onset of an interaction with a woman, and that's one of being professional. And even if they're being forward or kind of giving that, almost that little bit of a lead, like, hey, we're going to flirt. That you really start to understand that. And then I think social media is one of the biggest issues. And for me, it makes it easy because I make it turned on and make sure that, because your personal life always blends with your professional life. I don't know how it doesn't. Making sure that that's open and that there's no secret door to that's important. Oh, Lisa is muted.
Sorry about that. I'm apologize for my dog. How can women diplomatically point out sexism to men so she can be respected and not targeted as a man hater? Keri, would you like to address this?
No, but I will. I think that that's definitely a tricky question because, I think if you're in a group situation versus in a private situation or after, I think in, my experience in a group situation is if you can kind of make a joke of it in the situation to kind of bring light to it and maybe bring awareness. I know I had an experience recently at Expo a couple of weeks ago when I was with a bunch of male colleagues and from a former job, and there was maybe about 7 of us, and another former male colleague who was superior to all of us came into the group, and of all of us that was there, I was the only woman. He came and just hugged me, didn't shake hands with anyone else, but came right into the group and just grabbed me and hugged me. And it was also someone that I've had a previous experience with, where in a situation where there was a job transition because of Queen Bee syndrome, which we'll talk about later, I know. This was someone who I thought was a trusted confidant, who I had gone to ask for help as a leader in the organization, who, I was even in this situation, I was a little fearful to go to them because I said, I feel like in talking to you, I might be putting a target on my back. And, sure enough, within 6 weeks, I was transitioned out. And so this was a person that I hadn't had an interaction with since, and he comes right into the group and, just wrapped his arms around me. And it was just a very awkward moment. And I made a joke about it. I was like, oh, I see no one else gets hugs from you. And, there was a couple other incidents in the whole situation. And afterwards, I walked with one of the male colleagues over to the WIN event over at Expo. And he said to me, like, wow, that whole experience was really wild. Like, there was so many things that happened that made me uncomfortable. He had 2 daughters himself. And so we were talking about it, and I was like, yeah, that's why I'm bringing you to the WIN event. That's why organizations like that exist. We need to have these environments where we can start to talk about it. And, that's why Amy created this panel. Like, we're talking about some really uncomfortable things. But, how do we bring that attention to it in the incident? I made a joke about it, but afterwards I did talk to at least one person about it who was sincerely interested in trying to understand, how can we change this? Like, that was not okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kantha, would you like to address this?
Absolutely. And more power to people like Amy for bringing light to such an important subject. But something about making lemonade from lemons comes to mind. And in addition to all that Keri so aptly pointed out, I have to say that all my life I've witnessed firsthand sexist assumptions and practices that often hold back some very capable people, but channel the others into the very wrong, roles. So when a woman is shut out of her senior position, or she's diverted into a role that seems to be so stereotypically feminine, we're also making a place for a leader who's there because of his gender, not because of his abilities. And this is proven time and time again with disaster and utter failure. So how do I deal with sexism when I'm faced with it? Well, I could point it out, but it could land on deaf ears again. So I have chosen my keyword change to do this. And the way I've done this is by systematically doing something that will change the situation. So time and time and time again, I'm often suggested as the only speaker on an all-male panel or an all-male research group. I'm the only researcher who's a female. How do I handle it? I systematically suggest another female speaker or leader instead of me and insist that that person take the place. Invariably, what happens is that the organizer will add that person with me. So I have surreptitiously changed the makeup of the panel, and now there are 2. If I had explained it, they would have been alienated. By adding another person, I've changed that equation, and then they come to realize that having 2 women and more. I hope that answers your question, Lisa.
Yes, absolutely. And Sandra, I know you wanted to speak on this as well.
Yeah, I've experienced this in the past, maybe a few years ago, when another individual was introducing me to their COO and the CFO. And I've never met them because they just joined that individual's company. And I was introduced as, oh, this is Sandy, she runs the lab. She's smarter than she looks. Don't let her looks fool you. And at first, because I was so green, I didn't know how to respond to that. And I just laughed it off. And I realized when I laughed it off, that was just like my stamp of, I'm approving you that you can say those things. But as you know, I progressed in my profession, I start to speak up for myself and to speak out saying, hey, that's really inappropriate. But what it came down to was how relatable am I to the person that I'm talking to? When we are expressing our comfort level, instead of focusing on do this and don't do that, we kind of expand our listening audience, right? Nobody likes to be told what to do, least of my 3 kids, right? They hate it when I tell them to do stuff. It's the same thing as adults. Like if you're constantly telling me, don't do this, don't do that, then they're just going to shut off their listening power towards you, and they're not going to hear what you're trying to express. But if you talk about, hey, I would appreciate it, and express your needs and your comfort level, people are a little bit more receptive. And that's really important, like planting little seeds. I'm not doing like crazy big things, but I realize, and Elan could probably speak to this too, planting little seeds can grow big plants and it can make big changes. And people want to listen to those who are authentic, honest, true, and positive, just like some of our test lab results too. So it's just really what you're presenting in the conversation. It's really not about them. It's about how you show up to the conversation.
Now, Keri mentioned a few moments ago the queen bee syndrome. So the question is, do women bully other women at work? What has your experience been with internalized misogyny, and how can we cure this queen bee syndrome, Keri?
Yeah, so first, let me say that, I know Jim brought up that, sexism isn't just in one direction. It's not just men towards women. It's also women towards men. And, unfortunately, it's women towards women. We kind of talked about it at a group. It's not so much men towards men, but unfortunately, it is women towards women. And, I've always said there's 2 kinds of women. There's the kind that really support and uplift and empower other women to and mentor other women because they're really genuinely wanting other women to succeed. And then there's the type of women, and we call them in high school the mean girls, who really degrade other women, and they're super manipulative. They make you think that they're there to empower and support you and be your friend, and you should confide in them. But really, there's this underhanded, they want all the focus to be on them. A lot of times they're the idea stealers. I'll often see they don't let other people do their jobs because they'll say, oh, I like that part of their job, I want that. And if they're in a position of power, there's really no ability to say no to that. And, I've been in situations like that where it's a direct boss, and also a couple times too, where it's been someone else in the C-suite when I've sat on an executive team and, watch them not just bully me, but also other women too. And they're in such a position of power that there's really not a lot you can do with that. And, it's hard because a lot of people end up tiptoeing around the organization, and, it's going to HR in situations like this. It's not necessarily always helpful because typically when a woman is in, or a man is in a higher position than you, HR, it's not that they're not your friend. They're going to make you think that they're your friend, but they're, at the end of the day, they're always going to protect the company. And if you're a squeaky wheel and saying, this person's treating me this way, it doesn't usually end well. But you can see on the other side, like I had, once gotten to a point where I was internalizing it so much that I had a full body rash. I mean, that's when I knew I can't do this anymore. I need to speak up. When you're feeling yourself getting physically sick from a situation that's causing you so much stress. And then once you're on the other side of it, I wasn't sleeping during that time. And there was just so much going on for me. And it was like within a week, I was sleeping through the night again. I was happy. It's like once you can make that transition to the other side, but it's really hard to get there. Because as I said earlier, you do internalize so much of this and question yourself and what are my contributions, but it's hard to navigate it because, in some of these bigger corporations too, a lot of times they'll do leadership training and all these mandated kind of HR platforms that make you feel empowered. But then when you try and deal with the situation that they're giving you tools for, they're not really being authentic on the other side and allowing you that safe space to talk about it if there is really a situation to bring resolution other than no longer working there. And then a lot of times too, you'll see, these queen bees end up being in a place where they're still there for many years to come, and you just see so many high quality employees leave, a place of employment, and it's really unbelievable. And then, finally, a few years down the road, you see the company finally recognize it. And it's like, well, you lost so many high quality people in the process because of that toxic culture that was created. So it's, I don't know that I have the answer to that one, except that, if you find yourself in that situation, just start looking for another job. I mean, we're all employable at the end of the day, right? I mean, if it's, it's hard when they're at a higher level position than you. And especially when it's a boss, it's a very difficult situation to navigate when it's a boss.
Keri, so sorry, when I was at a pharmaceutical company, it was one of the top Fortune 100 companies. One of the things that had happened was this internal misogyny, like women just hating on other women, to a point I got constantly sick, respiratory infection after another infection, because it was all emotional and it was manifesting physically. I ended up leaving that company and I have never been happier. Same thing with you, because when women are like, oh, slow down, you're working too fast, and they didn't want me to succeed. They didn't want me to move forward. Or one of the biggest things I've heard is men have a thing for Asian women, right? So that's how you succeeded. And you hear that, it's so discouraging, like seriously. So now in my position, I make sure that other women are always invited and networking. I introduce everybody to everybody. There's no, you're in this circle and you're in that circle. It's like, you are going to know everybody. I don't care who you are or what your background is. If I know somebody, you're in my network, and I will introduce you to anyone that you need. And coming over that, I realized one of the biggest things and the biggest advice that I can give to other people, just don't gossip. If you are listening to it, you are participating. It is as simple as, I feel really uncomfortable talking about this. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think this is respectful to the other person because they're not here to defend them, right? And it's as easy as walking away from that conversation.
And Lisa, if I may add to what Sandra and Keri have said, it's all about power. So whoever is on top, man or woman, now has to protect their position. They've broken through the glass ceiling and they're up on top. They've got to protect it with power. So change is the way to get at it. If you can't always leave, if you can't walk away, and instead of suffering from inside, change the situation. So one of the things we do as women, as our foremothers have done, is to teach the art of collaboration. Women do this very well. We are hardwired to take care of others. So why don't we systematically, as Sandra said, bring others in, raise their status, introduce them as stars, not as, she's even just as bright as beautiful, or things like that, in demeaning stuff. It's about power. Give them the power, position them up, because as you do that, it's sort of the rising tide raising all boats. Not only does it raise the status of women, but it shows the queen bee, if she's insecure, that she either join us or she is going to lose. And that's an important part of it. Learning how to do this collectively is a very important thing.
Kantha, I think you hit the head on the nail, because I think a lot of times it does come down to insecurity. The queen bee doesn't feel secure in their position, which is, going back to that idea stealing kind of concept is, if they're in a position of power, they can take those ideas as their own, but it really always comes down to that. They want to be the focus of the spotlight because, they're that insecurity that they need to be the top dog all the time. It's absolutely due to that.
And that's look, good leadership lets all people shine, right? And so when people aren't allowed to shine, that starts to create that discord. Anyway, I know for us, and I mentioned it in my chat, that when I went and became the chair of the International Peptide Society, my first rule was it's going to be 50% women, women speakers, docs. It's just got to be that way, because I know, first of all, I knew a lot of talented women physicians that weren't getting the credit they deserved, and I just wanted what they knew to be taught. I mean, it was very simple, but I think whether it's man or woman in that queen bee spot, because you think of a man kind of still being at the top of that organization. There's that issue of leadership allows for management by allowing management to lead, and when we don't understand that concept, it starts creating that pressure. Then you create secondary pressure on the fact that there's the sexuality and sexism that comes with it, whether it's female to female or male to female. And honestly, I've had situations where I was uncomfortable as a quote straight male, and having someone that was approaching me, and when I would say no, it'd be like, oh no, I think you really should think about this more. I'm like, no, honestly, I'm comfortable with who I am, and I like where I am, and it's okay. Still could be your friend. And I think so in all these situations, it gets back to us feeling, and like what I've heard from all of you is we start to become comfortable and empowered in who we are, and then we can stand up for ourselves and then unite together, male and female, whoever we are, right? So that we can really start to be instruments of change.
Absolutely. Now we have a question from the audience, anonymous. Did any of our panelists remember having a moment growing up when a parent or friend told you to be cautious with men, for example, to be cautious when walking home at night alone?
I had the reverse situation. I come from a country where the average height is 5'5" or 5'7", and I stand at 5'9". So usually the caution was about me because I have large feet, I'd step on people, but I was also a very good protector. But yes, women are often taught to dress down, to be cautious, and to be careful about other men. So that is helping us learn to be fearful instead of learning how to protect yourself should a situation arise. So I think we have to change that conversation about being aware, but not being afraid, about addressing it, but not shying away from it.
Yes. Anyone else? Keri?
I definitely was told that as a young girl, but I'll say with good reason. And, I have a daughter who's now 20, and during her high school years, we liked to joke once her older brother was off to college that we had a girls only house, and we kind of made it a safe place for her friends to come and be able to talk openly about whatever they wanted to, if they ever needed a safe place to land because of stuff going on at home or situations. And, there were a number of times where these girls took advantage of it. One after a sexual assault, another one after she got physically hit by her boyfriend. These girls came to my home and we had really open and honest conversations about it and what to do on the other side of it. I was living in Bethesda, Maryland at the time, and the Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh hearings were going on, and he went to Georgetown Prep, which was a local boys' school in the area. And, I had a bunch of 17 and 18-year-old girls that were really upset about this and that it was going on because, as they said, Georgetown Prep, rape culture is alive and real even today. Why do you think that we don't hang out with the prep boys? There's a reason. They're like, you drink a little bit at a party and one of them is going to take advantage of you. So yes, it was really important to me as a mom and as a, mentor to a lot of these girls. I mean, they still message me when they have big life events. One of them had their first scientific publication and she sent it to me. She was so proud of herself. So I'm really proud that I was able to work with these girls and help them navigate some of these issues as they started college and things like that. So I think it's important to have those conversations, even though, Kantha, I know you said we don't want to disempower girls and we don't also want to scare girls, but these situations are super real. So we need to talk about it. 1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted in college. So if we don't talk about it, there's going to be a lot of blame that's placed on individuals that they don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so good that they had a place to go. I'm that mom as well, so I appreciate you. Now let's talk a little bit about being older, 50 and over. Much of the messaging around sexism and feminism tends to focus more on younger women with issues like equal pay, birth control access, and abortion rights, which are all very important, obviously. How do you see women aged 50 and older being treated in the workplace? And in what ways should we be supporting these women in their careers and through healthcare benefits as well? Jim, would you like to speak to this?
Well, I mean, I think what typically happens where the challenge becomes, because the culture is still in this transition of the younger, more attractive woman comes on the scene, and there's the immediate tossing out of the experience, the wisdom, the talent that is cultured over, say, 20 to 30 years of work. And I think it's very real. And I know for at least in the companies that I own, we try to become agnostic to age, meaning that sometimes really young people have brilliant ideas. And most of the time, people that have been around longer have a little more wisdom to see how those ideas can be applied. And so I think it's just really important that that bias tries to be broken through. I do think I think it's always an issue in terms of, with men, as I'm in the minority here. I think, with men, there's always that, oh, wow, that's a really pretty young woman that walked in the door just now, and they're working. And if anybody tells you they don't think that, or, wherever your bias is at, I mean, that is the subliminal thought where I think we're trained with, or maybe maybe it comes down to the genetics. I don't know, but you quickly have to overcome that, right? But I do believe that I think it's unfortunate that there's not that respect for the work that an older, I would say a 50-plus-year-old woman has, and her experience, expertise, and abilities, and then has to have this comparison right away and lose favoritism maybe over it,
Yeah. Did anyone else want to address this?
Jim, you hit it right on the head. You're very right. I've often wondered if you removed the glasses of men and gave them better hearing, but I wonder if it would change the equation, because would we appear better looking? And because they could hear better, would they understand more? But it's not that. It's really about accepting and understanding and valuing. And that is a culture that comes to you when you're young, or someone has infused it into you as you're growing up, like we do with probiotics. But if you don't have that culture, it doesn't matter. You could have the most intelligent Nobel Prize winner, etc., and the focus would be on the wrong item. So I absolutely understand what you're saying. And Salma asked a question, Salma Fathala, how does our panel feel about being introduced as beauty and brains? One side could say it's a positive thing. Another could say beauty should have nothing to do with knowledge, work ethic, and leadership. But on Salma, how many presidents have we actually evaluated by what briefcase they carry, or what cologne they wear, or what suit they wear? Except Obama did get that quite a bit. But how many do that? We don't. Why then do we focus on what designer outfit the woman is wearing and not focus on what she's saying? It's also not about education, because if it was about education, some of our leaders got to the top because of their education, because of their experience. So why then are they behaving that way? Why? Because they are taking advantage of that power. Notice they don't touch any of the people at the higher level, women who are at par with them. What they're touching upon or abusing are the very lower, folks, people who don't have the power. So we've got to change the equation, and we have to systematically in our industry, and that's what Amy is really doing, is to get our industry to understand not to introduce people by their looks, by their race, by their color, but by what they have done. It's the accomplishment and their achievements that really matter, and their skills. We need to do that collectively.
Yeah,
I mean, look at the
absolutely.
women out here. You know, we've all got so much. And Jim, thank you for being a part of this. We are here not because we look good, because I wouldn't be here otherwise. But I think we are here because of our ability to speak and to want to make that change, and making that change one person at a time.
I almost said amen.
Yeah, I was thinking it.
Thank you.
Well, I think all of us realize when we empower ourselves and are happy, we all end up feeling pretty beautiful, because, you know, it shines through us, right? So
Yeah.
that's, you know, in the end, our exercise needs to be in, you know, grace and self-esteem and empowerment, right? And it kind of takes we don't have to we don't have to look at that model-esque view of, you know, what is beauty, right? I find people of all size and stature and color beautiful. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been introduced into a group of men where it's like, oh, you know, this is even like Dr. Keri Marshall, isn't she gorgeous? And my response is, and I'm smart too. And then there's silence. And then, you know, someone will chime in, oh, yeah. But it's like, you know, that's always my response. If someone says something about my looks, but nothing, you know, on the other side of that, that's usually my, you know, the first thing I say, no matter what environment it's in. And it usually does silence whoever is on the receiving end of it. But, you know, going back to that queen bee syndrome, you know, for a moment, you know, where there was an executive, a C-suite executive who, after 3 months of being on the job, I was brought into the executive team meetings, the weekly meetings. And towards the end of my tenure in this job, she had said to me, they had let go of half of the employees. They were having some financial problems. It was a nonprofit. And she said to me, you know, you're lucky you still have a job, but the only reason you're on that executive team is because you're pretty. And if you weren't pretty, you probably wouldn't even have the job in the first place. And I was like, okay. You know, it was just, and it's one of those things where if I said anything back to her, you know, that just would have, you know, not ended well. It didn't end well in the end, but, you know, it's like, what do you say in a situation like that? I mean, my feeling is you shouldn't talk to anybody like that, let alone, you know, just in general conversation. It's just not how we should speak to each other. It's not, you know, coming from a place of compassion or just even being a human. It's just being rude.
But,
Yeah,
you know,
you're so
it
right.
brings something up that, you know, I've trained a lot, and physically I'm pretty, for an old guy, I'm like really pretty muscular, and you know, women will come up and just squeeze my bicep and like, wow, that's really not, man, you work out. That's really awesome. And so I think there's a little bit of that on both sides of the fence that has to be everyone has to be careful about, is protecting, you know, individual space. So, you know, a little, you know, because I know I don't feel uncomfortable about it. Like, oh, you violated me, as much as why do you think, how is that appropriate in a business meeting or in, you know, my first introduction with you, right? And I'm not wearing a muscle shirt, okay? And so I'm not like flaunting it, but you know, but it's a very interesting dynamic that occurs on both sides, where I know it happens with women more than men, and at the same time, a little bit of that culture for women, I think, was using their sexuality to gain that entryway into, you know, a boss or a colleague or a contract. And that has to also be, you know, looked at as well. You know, we have more than two thoughts in our minds, you know, so although it's contrary to popular thought. So you know, I just wanted to bring that up because I totally sympathize with what happens the majority of the time. And I also realize there's that other piece that, you know, we have to also discuss, like, hey, it works both ways on gaining that responsibility.
Yeah, people really need to understand personal space and boundaries. And this is a great question from Leah from the audience. In your experience, do businesses typically protect the abuser or the victim? Now I can guess, but Keri, if you'd like to start.
I think they're protecting the company. So I don't know that they're protecting either one of them as much as they're protecting the reputation of the company. And, you know, if a woman has an accusation towards anyone, you know, whether it be queen bee syndrome or male, you know, at the end of the day, it's HR's job to protect the company and the reputation behind it. So, you know, if it seems like a situation where, you know, the individual should be ushered out, you know, HR is going to do that. So they're not necessarily going to give you the tools as an employee, other than, you know, saying these are your resources, you know, on the other side, you know, per agreements or whatnot. But at the end of the day, my experience has been, it's not that they're protecting the abuser. It's just that unless it's so egregious and there's, you know, so much evidence, I guess, you know, in one particular case, you know, of sexual assault, I was, I think, the first person to share it with HR, but it happened to 5 other women after me before he was let go. And this was over the course of 3 years. So, you know, it's something like that where, you know, by time it happened over here, you know, so much else had happened. And, you know, again, I don't know that it was them protecting the abuser per se, but it's definitely a wild thing to experience and just say, wow, what took you so long? Because I know in this case too, when this person first got the job, 2 people had come up to me at a conference and said, you know, I'm sorry that this person is your boss now. And, you know, here's my experience with them in this other place. And one even said, I can't believe they were able to get another job. Their HR folder must be so huge from this other place, but now here they are in this position of power. And I was like, yeah, you know, it's pretty wild. And I had already had this specific experience with this person, and wasn't really in a place of talking about it. But this person was also going around and being pretty aggressive in this cocktail situation. So it was actually like kind of validating for me to just stand back and watch that happen. But, you know, it was really wild that people can go from one employer to another in positions of power and do it all over again. It's almost like we label sexual offenders, you know, in certain ways out like in the general community, but we can't do it in the professional workplace. And when someone's hired in another place, they don't go through their old HR file to see all the egregious acts that they performed. And that even goes for a queen bee syndrome. I mean, typically in those situations, those women also have a long file of egregious behavior towards other people as well. So, you know, but I think in terms of sexual assault, I think there should be maybe a different level that someone is held to when they are forced to leave an organization because of assault. But I don't know what that looks like.
Keri, so just really quickly, I do a lot of employment verifications for employees who have left my company and looking for another job or starting another job. So when they call me and I'm guided by legal team, I cannot disclose any of that type of information. The one thing you can answer honestly and truthfully is, would you ever hire them again? That yes or no, that it plays a big role, right? And that's the problem, is that none of these are come to light because they're protecting the company, they're protecting the corporate and the executives. And we're not allowed to share any of that information if there are issues.
Now, what's the most sexist comment that has been aimed at you in the workplace, and what did you do about it? Kantha, would you like to start?
People usually ask me to wear a sari so they could see my midriff. And they often ask me if I'm going to come to award ceremonies saying, are you going to wear a sari? So one of the ways to answer that is to just look at them and smile and say, what? And if you do it twice, they get it. And most people will step back. Shining the mirror and, you know, sort of showing the mirror and shining it back on them usually works. But that is one of the ones that I've heard so often. It just makes me wonder.
Yeah, that's terrible.
There's so much more about the Indian culture, but they focused on the part where I could show my midriff.
Sandra?
I had a similar thing. Somebody asked me to go to a company event. Are you going to wear a short skirt? Are you going to wear a dress? And my response is, so how does that help my job? Like, what does that do for you? What does that do for you? Like, how does that display my capabilities? And they just get really quiet. And they're like, oh, I guess it's not related. I'm like, okay, so there's your answer. It's not appropriate.
Absolutely. And Keri?
I definitely think it's something related to my looks enabling me to be in the position I'm in rather than the hard work that I've put in for almost 25 years in the industry, you know, half of which has been an executive level team. So, you know, it's just, I kind of have to roll with it because it comes from both men and women sometimes. And it's just frankly obnoxious. So I don't know.
We need to wrap up in a few minutes. I'd love any final thoughts. Jim, if we could start with you and just keep it brief because we are almost out of time.
Well, I think this is, first of all, amazing that I got to sit on this panel because it's wonderful to see different perspectives on, and this is truly a big issue that we all need to address. And you know, from my end, I think I'm just going to become even more hyper aware that I'm communicating correctly to everyone. So this was fantastic.
Great. Kantha?
Thank you, Lisa. Sexism is such a terrible waste of human resources. It's all about power. Remember that. When someone tries to attack you at that level, it's because they're afraid to attack you at the accomplishment level, at the intellectual level, maybe even at the physical level. So change that situation by changing the conversation. If you shift that equation, you'll notice that you can actually disarm them very quickly.
All right. And Sandra?
One piece of advice that I can tell everybody is, as women, we have a hard time saying no, right? Especially me. And it's okay to say no. It's okay to be honest with your feelings. You don't always have to say yes, and you don't always have to take it.
Yeah, that's great. And Keri?
I think just a couple tips that have kind of, I guess, saved me in some of the situations I've been is if something is sent to you in writing via email or something like that, or even text message, like print it out. You won't always have access to your computer or some of those things like later on if you need it, which goes along with if something is said or done to you that makes you feel uncomfortable, even if it's a girlfriend or a colleague that's a close friend, definitely share that experience with someone right away so you can have that reality check and you're not questioning yourself. But it also helps with that kind of documentation and just writing down as many. And if this goes for if you have any trauma like this in your life, it's like writing it down immediately when it happens, so that that experience in the moment is as accurate as possible. All of that is just, it can be really powerful for even the healing process. So you don't go back and say, did that really happen?
Yeah, so true. This has been fantastic. I've learned so much today, and I'm so honored to have been asked to moderate. You're all such fantastic people. Can't wait to have you on Health Power. I'm just completely moved, and this is just fabulous. But in wrapping up, I wanted to thank everyone, of course, for attending our Elephant in the Room Sexism panel discussion for the healthcare, nutrition, and science sectors of the industry. Now, be sure to fill out the survey on our panel today for a chance to win a $25 Amazon gift card. You can find the link to the survey in our event platform for this session. Now, please join us next Thursday at 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time as we examine the topic of sexism in the food, beverage, and beauty sectors of the natural products industry. And for a live discussion in response to this panel, head over now to LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube and watch the After the Elephant session with Mark Allen of Late Night Health. You can find the links to these pages in the chat. Thank you everyone for attending, and a special thank you to our mentor panelists for participating. You are all absolutely fantastic, so brilliant, so wise. It's again such an honor, and we will see you next week with a new panel lineup. I want to thank everybody so much again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Goodness.